Here we go, and welcome to the webinar. And I'm just going to let my colleague Jenn, who's in Canada, introduce herself, and she will be co-hosting the webinar. So Jenn, please go ahead and let them know what you do within Jolly Learning.
Perfect. Well, this is my first co-host, so I'm a little bit nervous. So if I make any mistakes, I'm just learning. I have been on here as a presenter in the past because I'm one of the people who created the assessment digital product. So I am a UX designer and I take a look at how we can make our product digital. I do a lot of research, so I have reached out to lots of teachers in the past and also our trainers and just our wider community to find out what you like, what you wish you could have. So if you ever have any ideas and you want to reach out, my name is Jenn, spelled with two N's, Jenn at jollylearning.co.uk. So you can email me with any ideas. I'm always looking to see how we can make our product better. And I joined the team about 2 years ago. Yvonne, as most of you know, has been with the team for much longer, and she's an experienced trainer and has a wealth of knowledge, and I love working with her. Yeah, that's me basically. I'm based in Montreal. I was living in the UK before, but now I'm back in Canada, so happy to connect with everybody here.
Yeah, but more than anything, Jenn was a teacher before
Oh
she.
yeah,
So
I
that's a
forgot to
very
say that.
important, a very important point to make. And what we'll do before the session ends is Jenn will pop in the email because it
Yeah.
is really important that we can get any ideas or things that you think may be helpful for you. And also, having been a teacher, she fully understands where you're coming from. So that's one
Yeah,
bonus.
exactly. And really my goal is to take your ideas and feed it back to the team and try to make it happen. And actually the more that you tell me, the better our product will be. And it's even the small things. You've got ideas because you are the ones using our product and you use it day by day. So like, oh, if only we could have this. And even if you don't know how that might look, just the idea is enough to get us thinking about how we can improve the product. So definitely reach out with any ideas that you have. It's always our goal. So actually, I'm really happy to be now Yvonne's co-hoster so that I can hear your ideas and your questions. So if you have a question for Yvonne, I'll keep an eye on the webinar chat and I'll try to do my best, Yvonne, to either interrupt you in the moment or ask you later any questions that people mention. And if you have any questions about product or where you can find things, I'll do my best to show you where you can find those things.
Okay. So one thing that Jenn will be doing is monitoring questions, and anything that's a bit long and lengthy, we'll keep to the end. And hopefully I'll be able to answer a lot of questions as they come up. I do keep an eye on the chat. So let's get started with the webinar. And Jenn is going to be there in the background, fielding questions and also being able to help you in any way. Well, all of our webinars respond to questions or suggestions that come from you, as Jenn has had been explaining. So what we have been doing with our recent webinars is looking at areas within the program that you have asked for more explanation on. And one of the things I would say is that we often get asked about how we are using the importance of step one to progress on to step two and step three, or books one, moving on to pupils' books two, book three. So, welcome to the session. And if you're just joining now, we can see that you are from all around the globe, which is amazing. So, thank you for that. So, what is in the session? The session is going to be a great way for us to look at how letter formation goes on to early reading and writing. Now, I'm put in reading there as well as writing, because a bit further along, you're going to see how these are all connected. But the most important thing is about how the program supports all this scaffolding so that you are getting what the children need built into the program and you don't have to look anywhere else. But there are some things that are really important and needed and we can't skip over. And certainly what we do in step one or book one is fundamental to how we move on to children being able to write securely, and that also double skill of being able to read. And as I said, there is a big connection. And also, We can look at some activities that help children who find it all a bit challenging. But more than anything, why is Jolly Phonics so successful? Well, we say it's a fast-paced program, but what we do know is that if we teach the letter sounds too slowly, children just don't get it. But if we get them to do it in a pace that works for you and in your classroom, that children are blending and segmenting all the time, then this is really successful. And also that we have lesson plans that are easy to adapt as long as you are following the core. That's something we have to say. And you can use the way the program is designed and the lessons are designed to add some flexibility to your delivery. The lesson plans have been done as at a glance where you can see how you can start your lesson and progress. And also in Jolly Classroom, if you go on the question mark, you will see how these can give you teacher tips. The great thing about this program is it's been developed by teachers, so they know exactly what it is like to be in the classroom. And another thing about Jolly Phonics, it is a systematic synthetic phonics program. And and part of having a good program is making sure that within your program delivery, children are being able to do multisensory activities. More than anything, this is important because, if I was to ask any of you at the moment, how do you like to learn? What is your preference? Is it writing? Is it notes? Is it doing different things? The most important thing is the lessons that we are giving you to use with your children are addressing all the learning styles to one way or another. And also, the research shows that this is very effective to help children. So, looking at the importance of letter formation, many of you who work with young children will often recognize that this is a real struggle. And it'd be really great in the chat box if you could just say what ages you're working with. What we do know is that children with writing need lots of practice, and this is often something that we facilitate by having writing corners or activities, or even using multisensory ways of this, using air letters, plasticine letters, and we'll talk a little bit about that more. So in the chat, what age groups are people working with, Jen?
Wow, there's so many and it's happening so fast. I would say between 3 and 7, but there's also some older ones too, 8 and 9, 9 and 10,
Yeah.
first and fourth graders. I mean, 7 and 9. There's really a huge mixture. It looks like between 3 and 10 is the majority.
Well, as we can see on this slide, it is a foundational skill that if we do not spend enough time, that children are making that correspondence between that sound that they are hearing and also that letter formation, then a bit later on, they are struggling to do the remembering what was that sound and how do I write it. So it's we want some or to do them automatically, where they don't have to think about that letter point. Am I doing it the right way? Am I reversing it? And many of you are very familiar with the but and the de, how they reverse that. Some of the things come with cognitive maturity. Asking a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old might be challenging, but certainly as children are getting older and they have a pencil grip, that is a great step forward. But we can facilitate that beforehand with Play-Doh letters, sand letters, getting children to say the sound as they're doing the shape. It's one of those things, it's a bit like driving a car, really. You've got all your senses going and you want to remember to do it automatically. But what we want is children to get past that level where they're having to think about the shape of a letter. That needs to become automatically. And we'll be looking at why that is important. A child practicing the formation, the starting point and where it goes and coming down. I'm not suggesting you all do it on your windows because that would mean a lot of cleaning. But as you can see, as we watch again, this tactile interaction the child is having is certainly helping where he can remember the starting point and coming down through the book. Also, not only within the pupils' books, but in Jolly Classroom, there are many opportunities to practice handwriting. We do talk about the froggy grip because we know that children's fingers get tired and they need to build up their fine motor skills. But we're not only developing this end of the memory path, it's also up here in the brain where they are making that connection with what I write and what I see. Many of you, as adults, especially teachers, have learned about upside down writing. I bet, Jen, you remember that. You're walking through the classroom and you can read upside down what the children have put. We have such a mastery of letter shapes. And for many of you in an international environment are probably using different symbols as well as different sounds. So it really is a skill, isn't it? It's a great skill that we have, but we have to start somewhere. And starting with letter formation, letter sounds, and having it all come together is where the magic starts. Now, if you were starting your lesson or your class, you'd probably be thinking, where do I put this within my lesson? We've got a great example here. We have the teacher's book and you have the at a glance page. The great thing about the teacher's book is it does help you structure your delivery of your lesson. The one good thing about the 5 key skills is that it is distributed throughout your lesson to a lesser or greater degree. For example, when you first start with your group 1 sounds, children are just beginning their journey with blending and segmenting. So it's lesser there, it's in a lesser degree, but then we're building up and building up and building up. The connection of children using not only their skills from what they see and what they touch and what they do is building up on how they will move on with steps 2 and 3 with writing. So as you can see here, it's all in at a glance kind of format. And Jen, also in Jolly Classroom, the teacher tips give quite a lot of information, don't they?
Mhm. Yeah, they really do.
Yeah, so you're kind of covered. But what you can see here is at the beginning, you have where your warm up, and this could involve using letter shapes, air shapes, quick, pacey, get children using that information. And you've also got a lot of activities at the back here on what you can do. Now, I've been talking for a bit and I want you to join me in a little bit of an activity. Just imagine that you are that 4-year-old sitting in a classroom and someone has put up a load of squiggles on the blackboard and you are expected to copy it. Nobody's explained what those letters or those shapes means, and they have just left you get on with it. How does that make you feel? So, if you'd like to join in a little activity now, here we go. Get your pens out, or if you want to give this a try, just try copying 1 or 2 of these symbols and then put in the chat box. How challenging was it for you? Let's see. Just give it a go. If you've got a pen or a pencil, try copying one of these symbols just to see how hard it is. Now, if you want a really extra challenge, try copying it with the hand you never normally use. Now, how hard is that? So are we getting any responses in the chat,
Yeah.
Jen?
Difficult, frustrated, not sure where to start, you
Yeah,
know, thinking you got to keep looking at it all the time to see if you've got it right. I mean, I remember this with children, some especially when it's on the board, looking up and down and up and down and losing their place. It's
yeah,
very difficult to do, especially for some children, you know, and there's so many lines here, you know, we're influenced by what we're taught in the past. So even where we start will be influenced by our own experiences.
yeah. So this is a really good example. You imagine that being a small child and you haven't got a good pencil grip, using the other hand has helped you understand that point. And because you don't know these shapes and symbols, you are getting frustrated. I wonder if anyone can guess what language it is in the chat before I move on. Can anyone guess what language it is? Anyone?
And we got a lot of Chinese,
Yeah.
Chinese, Mandarin, Japanese, Korean.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
Cantonese. And it says, I love learning, apparently. So as you can see here, It's a struggle because we don't know the symbols, we don't know the starting points. As Jen said, looking up and looking down, we lose information. And this is why it's really important. This is a great activity to help you understand the point of view of that small child. So, embedded in all of our lessons are the opportunities for you to help the children practice. And also, what we are looking at is how writing fluency, it supports writing fluency and speed, in meaning that children become very competent in being able to write down in the early stages dictation. So, if you can imagine when children understand not only the 42 sounds in English, but how they go together to form words, which will have been practiced not only through blending and segmenting and using Jolly Classroom, but we also have to remember tricky words as well, which have a different approach. But what children are, they don't have to think about the letter shape as they are trying to express themselves, or if they're doing dictation. And also, it means that they have more coherent work. If you're having to stop every other letter because you can't remember the shape, as a child, you are going to give up. You're not going to have that thought you had 2 minutes ago is just going to go because you're trying to remember, is it a descender? Does it go up? I can't remember. So it stops that flow of creativity. And also for some children, they get fatigued. This is quite normal. Small children get fatigued, and that's why the pencil and the froggy grip is so important. So you can see that fluency comes with the confidence of that letter formation, going right back to stage one, where we are building a lot into practicing and also that correlation between what I hear and what I see and what I put on the paper. And what you put on the paper, you read. So you can see that it's all connected in one way or another. And also, as you can see, this is the very first page that the child will see. We have opportunities to start, but many small children may not be able to have correct letter formation. You can do finger tracking, you can get air letters, you can extend this to magnetic letters, may not be writing, but it's a way for you to tell that they understand that that sound has a symbol. And also how they can represent this with workbooks. And I think, Jen, this in Jolly Classroom, there are several options for handwriting, aren't there?
Yeah, so we had the letter formation, and it is something that we're always thinking about whether we need more different ways to do this. So again, this does come back to the idea that you as the user, if you're thinking like, I wish there was this kind of thing, that information is really valuable for us, especially if you see something outside, and you like that idea, letting us know helps us to make the product better.
And so physical representation is helping, as I said, with that mapping, which is really important. And also the pathways that come with that. I mean, when you are writing in your mother tongue, how often do you have to think about things? It's coming naturally if you're taking notes or directions or having to write an email. But if you think back to the early stages, we are building within the program or scaffolding how children are making that transition of using that letter formation to be able to move on to do simple CVC words. And that comes through with the dictation. And also the kinesthetic side or the multisensory side is addressing the diversity of learners that you have. We know that for some children, writing is a great pathway for them, but there are others that take a little bit longer and will need the Play-Doh and also using the sandboxes or other activities that you have. So there is a big range of support that fits into your lesson. Now, one thing, Jen, we are aware of is that teachers don't have a lot of time for big multisensory activities, but they have time for air letters, drawing on the back, simple things like that, haven't they?
And in fact, you might find that you do have some time in the afternoon. Sometimes the afternoon session can be a little bit more free playing exploration, and you might be able to incorporate that kind of sand writing or foam writing in other ways, or writing on the windows in the afternoon sessions when it's a little bit more play based.
Okay. So also, while we are thinking about young children, we're very, very aware of cognitive load in that children are having to do more at an earlier age than they did before. Now, we used to think that children not having English, well, having English as a second language was very unique to countries outside of the UK. But what we do know is that in the UK, that many children have their home language, and they come to school. This is English isn't a language they are exposed to, so they are learning from a low point than just like our colleagues do in international environments. So, what we are doing is building vocabulary as well into understanding how children are doing their letter formations. And this can be done through the illustrated flashcards that we have, the stories that we're using, and also getting children to articulate the knowledge that they have. But what we do know is that weak letter formation, it means the child in there doing their, even if they're doing magnetic letters or whiteboards or anything like that, they keep their attention focused on the letter formation rather than the task at hand. And I think when we're thinking about assessments, um, Jenn, we often see that this comes through with the assessments. Jenn designed the assessment app. This is something that comes through, isn't it? That they can read, they can blend, but they can't write.
Yeah, it actually, I think it's quite a common issue. And that's why, we have both assessments. They're separate and you can see the data separately, which is really important because you do want to identify if a child is weaker in one skill versus the other. You want to be able to identify that and really target that.
Hmm. And I mean, many of the schools that we talk to say that writing does come in a bit later. And what we're finding are children can perhaps read and reproduce, and this may be the digital effect, and they need more practice with writing. But they get there, and using a structured program like Jolly Phonics helps them get there because it's embedded into their daily lessons. And also, what we do know is that having good formation, and some countries join up, some have print, but either their writing speed develops. But you can see the statement at the bottom of this slide, which said that children who struggle with handwriting will often become reluctant writers. And that is so obvious because if in the early stages they haven't got that foundation in place, of course they're going to struggle. And of course, it's going to impact in other areas of their learning. So while we're at this point, it's good to recap on some of the things that we've mentioned about investing in children being able to have that automated approach to letter shapes, letter foundation, be it palm writing, be it air writing, the multisensory activities lays down a brilliant foundation, not only in English, but also you can use these strategies in your mother tongue. Providing a wealth of exposure for children might include looking at Jolly Classroom, where they can use that tactile resource, and also it's very visual, where they can see the starting point and where they end. And also on Jolly Classroom, something I'd love to do was doing rainbow letters, where we started with one color and other children would come up and do other colors. It is important to do dictation, and dictation sounds like a very big word, and we'll have a look at how you can support that. But what you will see on the slides here is embedded within Jolly Classroom. Not only are we specifically looking at letter formation, as you can see here, but it is trickled through the activities, helping children reinforce as they move along. It's a lot of information that young children are taking on board, but the way the lessons are paced will help them assimilate the letter sounds, the letter formation, so that they can move on securely, not only for blending and segmenting, but also free writing later on. We'll have a look at that as we move forward. But it's consistency, I'd say, Jenn, isn't it? It's consistency. You can't just say, I'm going to do letter formation once a week and that's going to be it. That won't work, will it?
Yeah, and because also it's about building up the muscle strength in your fingers. So you need to be doing it every day for a little bit of time. And some pupils have weaker fingers than others. And I think we're finding it because in our day and age, children are playing outside on the playground less. So they're not doing that grip, the monkey bars, and they're not using their hands as much, probably connected a lot to technology. So we do need to be providing them opportunities like Play-Doh and that kind of thing to build the muscle strength up in their fingers.
And we also have supplementary resources, which are the handwriting books. And these are designed to work with the letter sound groups. And these can work very well as homework or revision. But all the way through, they are not only helping children with their fine motor skill development, imprinting, or working with the letter sounds that they are doing. There are visual cues. And as the books move on, there are simple sentences that they can do. But more than anything, what this is reinforcement. And reinforcement sometimes is the key for children who may be struggling. We're not saying that you spend hours and hours making a child do handwriting, but this letter formation with the handwriting books has meaning. It means that they can use it and they can also take the information from the core lesson and it's making sense with the activities that they're doing, like the handwriting books. So everything comes together, which is meaningful, which is very important, Jen, isn't it? You don't want to be a child doing pages and pages of handwriting if it doesn't have any meaning to what they've already learned.
And also it's overwhelming and we want to make sure things are fun and they have a reason behind them.
Yeah. And so when we're looking at the whole program to support letter formation, we are seeing that the multisensory approach, which again has been so successful as a global program, even can be used a bit later on because we have children who may join your classes a bit further on, they need to catch up, and also children who may just have that delay in being able to do their handwriting well. I remember in a class, I had a 6-year-old boy who was still struggling, and then it all came together. A lot of it is, as Jen says, maybe too much digital time, we don't know, but certainly opportunities to develop the fine motor skill, but also interest as well. It is sometimes difficult with children coming from one language to another. You've also got two options in you can use the paper-based or Jolly Classroom or a combination of the both to get success. And as you progress, it is important to do the assessments and the evaluation. And where are these strategically placed, Jen?
So we have 6 assessments throughout the year. They're at set times. So step one has two halfway through and at the end, and same with step 2 and 3. But also on our digital assessment tool, we have provided you with ways to assess more frequently if you need to. So at the end of each group, you can assess both in reading and writing separately. But it also allows you that flexibility. Let's say that you've taught groups 1 and 2, you can assess on groups 1 and 2. So there is a lot of flexibility built in because everybody has different pacing, different, times of breakup throughout the year. So it's really created with that in mind.
And I think the one important thing is that the benefit of doing regular evaluation and assessment means that you are not letting children go too far ahead without addressing what is missing in their core knowledge. So, if children are racing through to group 6 and yet they have letter writing skills that are poor or recall of letter shape from groups 3 and 5, for example, they've got gaps in their knowledge. So the one good thing about having the assessments is you can address those gaps before they go too far. So here we've got a few visuals on how children are using Jolly Phonics within the classroom. As you can see, we have the little finger phonic books, which have indentations so that the child can really feel the shape of that letter. They're not in the big books, they're only in the small books. We also have the bumper book of Phonics Fun, which is full of ideas where children are using, their skill with their fingers, also hand-to-eye coordination and expression, where they have the letter sounds and they are manipulating many different areas of the curriculum. It's a very cross-curricular resource to support the Jolly Phonics program. I have Jolly Classroom, and also what children do. I love the fact that these children have got headbands on with Inky on. That's just lovely. And the teacher doing the actions, which also support. So we have a lot of different ways that it's been used. And I should imagine if we asked you all, you'd tell us what works for you. So I've been doing a lot of speaking. We're going to be getting you involved in some activities in a minute. And if we look about how we get children started at a young age, I should imagine there's many of you from early years. Just put in the chat if you're early years, because if you are early years, you probably recognize the benefit of having environmental print where children are making that connection, that squiggle like McDonald's or stop or something like that is beginning to make a meaningful connection to them. Also, their names with registrations in the morning. So children are developing that curiosity that print has a meaning. Do we have many early years teachers here with us, Jen?
Yeah, we've got lots, it seems.
Wow. Yeah.
A
So
lot.
if you can really get children involved with environmental print, that they are recognizing that everything around them has print, even if it's mother language or symbols to English. It can be wrappers, it can be boxes. You are drawing attention to something that they will make a connection with later on. And also how your visual cues are supporting that. What have you got up? The wall frieze to reinforce the letter sounds that the children are using, the flashcards, and even things like reusables where you have the letter and the child can put plasticine over that or use markers to do rainbow letter formation. We are constantly scaffolding the skills, but we don't want to overspend time of this. This is why the program is designed that you have the 3 steps within one academic year. As I mentioned at the beginning, it's a fast-paced program, but you in your classroom have the challenge of knowing how fast do I need to go without missing out on essential information that children need. We build in letter format. You still may need to do quick multisensory activities to support older children. It's one of those things, isn't it, Jen, that you've got to work out what balance is for your class.
Yeah, it can take a little bit to figure it out, but yeah, finding out what works for your class is important.
So we have dictation sentences, and dictations, as I mentioned earlier on, sounds like a big word for little children, but they need that practice. And the dictation sentences are in the teacher's book, and we also have I've got to make sure I get this right because it's the word book. Ta-da, the word book that has the dictation sentences. I think no, it's the word book, and this is the word book and the word bank. So they all have a different purpose, but there are phrases, sentences there for dictation. Dictation initially takes time, and believe me, I remember getting very frustrated how long dictation took with small children, but they began to get much quicker and pacier with their delivery. So the more you practice, the better they become. And also, it's a great way for you to evaluate and assess again. Isn't that right, Jen? Because if you find there's about 5 children who are just not getting it, we know we have to stop.
Yeah, it's really important that you are supporting those pupils right away. And that's why I think doing assessments little and often is valuable. I mean, you also can tell which children are struggling in your classroom, and giving them that support before they move on is key. Otherwise, they'll be overwhelmed and they won't be able to keep up with the rest of the class.
Mm. And I've put on the slide that modeling sentences because children are curious to see the teacher put a sentence up on they want to know how you are writing. They want to know your starting points. And this is a great way as a teacher to model. Here I'm starting, I'm going around and a down and up. They love to see how you are modeling. This is their part of their lesson. So make time to do this within your class. And as you can see, reading and writing are connected, and you can stop even if you're reading the big books, the stories or any other related stories for your topic or theme work. You can pick a sound, you can pick a word and say it begins with a s. Get the children using that knowledge and doing air letters. Find every opportunity to model. And here we have a lovely picture of an open page, and you'll see the arrow pointing down there to letters and what you can write. So have a look for these within your lesson plan.
And I think also, if I could just quickly point out, a lot of people are mentioning about the dictation, and I'm so pleased to see positive comments about how valuable it is. And Sue and Sarah, our authors, would really reinforce that you need to be doing dictation right from the start. So at the beginning, it's just letters, and then you go into smaller words, and then into sentences by the end of the program. And doing it right from the start is so key, don't you think, Yvonne?
Yeah, and what I have noticed with schools I've gone to visit is that they do use whiteboards. They do get children to practice their letter formation and also start doing CVC words. Now, all of these words are in the teacher's book, the word book, or the word bank. If you are not, even I would have to check sometimes to make sure I'm using the right combination. Is getting children to do short words, like sat, pin. They're learning them, they're blending them, they're segmenting them. Why aren't they attempting to write them? And also, if you have children who are not writing, use the magnetic letters or any letters so that they are indicating that they understand that that shape is the sound you are asking me for when I hear that word. So if it is sat, they are pulling the right letters down to get that word in the right formation. I can't emphasize enough about dictation, and it's something that is often not brought into the lesson because teachers think, I just don't have time. It
Mhm.
is one of those things that does take time to begin with, but then it does work out that children are getting that automatic response to be able to do that letter formation easily. And as you can see here, you've got words on the page that can help you. You can see that certainly on this k and k, we have 4 words there that you could use for dictation if you wanted to have something quick and easy. But children are using their knowledge. We're saying that we're building up their skills, but we also need that skill to be presented because if you can't see it, you can't tell if the child needs more information from you. We're filling those gaps, remember, as we go along. So I have mentioned the word book and word bank, and as you can see here, they are similar but slightly different in that one has words that you can blend easily using the 42 sounds, which goes progressively, and the other one does have phrases and sentence for dictation. But also the teacher's book has this information for you. So don't worry, you could add this to your wish list if you want to have more information to support your class. But also, as you've just seen, within the materials, there are plenty of opportunities for you to use words that are used. So here we go with something a little bit interesting. We have here a great little sentence that was done by a child. Now, what you can see here is I went horse riding. That was fun. Now, if I got this from a 5-year-old, I'd be delighted. I'd be absolutely delighted because I can see that phonetically, what the sounds that she's hearing, we've got her or. Can you see? She's really getting those sounds out. And also the r, I, d, I, n. This is amazing. So this means that this child has really put some thought into trying to put a difficult word together. And I think, Jen, what we have to do is if we look at this for our evaluation, don't say what you can see, but this is very valuable for us as teachers, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Yvonne, some people have asked the age of this child. Do you know how old this child is? Because this does look quite good, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is a 5-year-old.
That's really good.
Yeah, towards the end of the program. So I've got this here, and I'm going to ask you teachers who want to participate in what tricky words does she know? What tricky words does she know?
So we've got was, went, that.
Okay. So let's have a look at was. Now, maybe she doesn't know was. If I'd have taught the tricky word was, I'd know that I'd need to revise that. Why would I need to revise it?
Hmm.
Because it's not oh, it's as it's a tricky word. So I would know that I'd
Hmm.
probably need to revise that. Also, if we look at horse riding, would we correct that? Let's ask our teachers, would you correct horse riding?
Yeah. No, 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 no.
Yeah, that's brilliant because what we're doing is this is what we want. We want children not only using their handwriting skills so that they can that thought is up there. I
Hmm.
went horse riding, that was fun. Can you imagine? I can now put that in a sentence. I can say it, but I can also write it and I can also read it. And you can just hear that inner monologue where the child has put, I went or us ra I ing. And that sounds perfectly normal when you're doing that, even if you're translating into English. And that was fun. That is amazing. And also they've put a full stop. What more could you ask? So
Yeah, that's
yeah. So as you can see, this kind of activity not only helps you understand, but also gets the child to be able to practice those sounds. And also you can see how those sounds are being manipulated. That inner monologue is coming through. So moving on quickly, what we can see here is progression of how we've gone straight from those letters and sounds, and we're moving now on to, letter formation, dictation, and starting free writing. So the free writing is often the scary part for teachers because it's like, where do I start? What do I need to do? And as time is pushing on, I'm going to go over this. You can stop and look at the recording after because all the information will be here. And you can see we have different ways of being able to support this. One where we're giving the image and we are looking at the writing, or and I love this idea that children are actually doing the drawing and the drawing is the stimulus for what they are writing. Now, one tip I can give you about doing this activity is don't lose all your class doing the drawing. Make sure that you have quite limits on how long you're going to spend, but also what you can see is the child having the visual cue, which is their drawing, is a great way for them to start the process of that inner monologue and then trying to write. But what we are seeing is that throughout the books, we are scaffolding this spiral, which is starting with that very short little attention span, and we're developing letters and letter formation, and that spiral is getting bigger and bigger and bigger as children are progressing through the program, and all of these elements here are coming together for successful free writing. And I'm going to get you to help me with something in a minute as the time's ticking on. So here we are, like, how do we get children started? If you are doing this activity, pop it in the chat box. Where would you start from? So we've got words and sentences on the pond with a visual. Where would you start? So let's see if we've got any answers to that, Jen.
yeah. Just waiting for it to come in. So I've got words, revise the words, talk about the pictures.
So I'm hearing all the right things about vocabulary, talk about it and model it so that children can get started. So this is one of the early ones, the activities that they do, where we have to model heavily what the children can use. And we often start with very basic grammatical structures because we're not really doing grammar, are we? But we need to support children. So you're quite right about where we start. And here we have the image. So children are looking at this image. We're asking them to identify certain parts within this image. So how would you engage children? What questions would you ask them? So again, we're looking at within my class, I've probably got 40 minutes. I want to get this done. I might not get it all done in my class, but I want to generate that curiosity. So first of all, I'm going for visual cues. So you can say, how do we get them engaged with visual cues? So what can you see? And I'm going to ask you teachers, what can you see in this image? What can you see?
I like that they asked that in the chat as well. Literally, they said, "What can you see in the picture?" So that's good. We've
Yeah.
got duck, we've got a pond, beautiful garden, boat, um, frog, plants, water,
Lovely.
mouse, action, reeds, water lily, water.
So what we're doing here is we're getting all this vocabulary, hopefully, from children, and we've got visual cues. But also, as a teacher, I have to be really mindful of where the children are and what letter sounds they know and what might be very difficult and challenging for them to put into their first words and sentences. So you can see here, I've circled the boat. Yeah, they can do that. I've got duck. Mouse. That might be a bit tricky. Why might mouse be a difficult word for them to write freehand? Think about that. And I'm also going to put here, I've got my simple structure, which is I can see. But as you can see, the words in green, I'm going to go with the words in green because I know the children can blend and decode. I know they can put these words together very easily, like d, k, b, o, t, f, r, o, g. They can do that. But if I'm going to introduce words like mouse, we've got the silent E, or we've got the hop over E, or the magic E. We've got swan, and swan has a spelling rule in that, just like with was, and ladybird. Can children remember that the E sound is the Y and not the E that they have learned? And also tricky words. So these are things that I would be careful of before I get my children. I'd get them to volunteer words that they knew, but then I would pick the ones that I know that they could spell or do dictation easily. Now remember, this is their first time they're doing this, and I don't want it to make it such a challenge. It's going to be difficult for them. And also, go back to this activity. Even if we have done, I can see a boat, I can see a duck. We're using very repetitive structures. And again, I can see, I can see. We're using things that are easy, but then we can go back to this at a later date and build it out. It's like, do you remember doing this activity? And we did I can see, and it'll be, oh yeah, there is. So you can build out these activities again and again. Your activity is never just one dimensional and one use. You can go back and use it in many different ways. Also, if we look at this one, where we have the children doing the drawing, how would you help the children with this activity? Let's check the chat box, Jen.
And while we're waiting for that, Yvonne, I just want to remind you we have 8 minutes left. This time has just gone so fast because you
Yep.
have so much amazing content to add, and we really love that. And we do also have some other questions that I'm hoping we can get to as well. So let's just take a look here. I don't have any answers quite yet. Can you remind us the question, please, Yvonne?
Yeah. How would you help children with this activity? I think one of the things that is important is to say they've only got a certain period of time for drawing, otherwise you will lose your lesson. I've done this myself, where I've really, said, come on, we're going to do drawing. And I've only got 5 minutes left for writing. And also maybe working in groups where children are working together so that you have different ideas coming in, or have a clear idea of what you want children to do, to draw, and then their representation of what they see. So like here, it's going to be a party. he ate some, and then move on and move on. Give them some cues on how you want this done so you don't lose a lot of time when they're just learning about this. And these are great for storyboarding. You can extend this out for storyboarding. But
Yeah.
the
So
one
we did
thing,
have a couple ideas there, which was writing vocabulary on the board ahead of time. Also, just clear instructions. So sketch it, write the
yeah,
sentence, then go back in color.
yeah, we always leave coloring to the end because you will lose your lesson. But one thing that you will have got from this so far is that the success goes that making sure that foundation stage one is done, you're assessing and making sure that there is a correlation between the letter sounds and how the child writes. Again, this is not wasted in doing assessment and evaluation. The dictation indicates to you children who may be having a deficit of knowledge, they may be missing out on certain things. Again, sometimes when we're doing assessment, it depends on the day with the child. I bet you know, Jen, that one day a child can be great, and the next time we assess, they just may not do well. Go
Yeah.
back, give them another chance. Also, the teacher's book provides you with everything you need to be able to get children to the point where they are writing successfully. Some children get it quicker than others, but are you modeling? Also, the activities that you bring to your lesson really do help with the success in that, and also the sensory activities. But we do know from our teachers that they don't have a lot of time, but there are great ones that can be done on that moment, in the moment, when it needs to be done. It doesn't need to be cutting, sticking, and pasting. And also, Jolly Classroom can provide you with that extra element for the children who really get it when it's very visual and it's big. Isn't that right, Jen? They need that visual stimulation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we've got a little bit of time for some less for questions, Jen. I'm going to come out of this
Yeah.
because this PowerPoint has caused me a lot of stress today. So I'm going to take this out of that.
So first of
Um,
all, the main thing, I just want everybody to know that we will be sending out the webinar afterwards because there's been a lot of requests about the webinar. And it's also on our YouTube channel in a couple of days. Is that correct, Yvonne? We
that
always,
is absolutely correct. And what we will do is modify it so you see it as how it's meant to be seen, not with all my
and then also a lot of people have been requesting about the PowerPoint. Is that something that you share, Yvonne?
Well, we don't share the PowerPoint, but you do get the recording. I'll find out about that.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure many of you found this really helpful, and that is something that we want you to share with your colleagues. So if that's possible. So we have a couple of minutes for questions, if there are any.
Yeah, we had some questions about how you would typically break down a lesson. So, how much time are you spending on things like letter formation and other parts of the lesson?
Okay, so mentioning about the teacher's book, again, this is one thing that is very individual to many of you because some of you have an hour, some of you have 40 minutes, some of you only have 3 lessons a week, and others have them each day. So, what I would suggest is you start with your lessons and you start to be able to curate them to fit the time you have. Now, within the book, often the pupil's book or the Jolly Classroom, when it comes to that, it's like a rush at the end. Make sure that when you're looking at the teacher's book, if I've got 40 minutes, I'm going to look at how long I want to spend on each section, ideally. So you break it down into measured time. That's going to be 2 minutes. That's going to be 5. I'm going to move on. Now, that's very prescriptive at the moment. But if you are using the lessons, you will begin to get your flow that suits your class. Because if you are evaluating and assessing, you will recognize after the first 3 sound groups that maybe that 2 minutes I've got at the beginning, I can reduce down to 1 minute and spend more time in other areas and perhaps even dictation as children are flowing along. But if you are not evaluating and you're not assessing, you will not know that. And it might be the reverse. You might have children that will need a lot more foundational work at the beginning of the lesson before you do the core. So that bit of advice is it's very different for every class, but that's how I started. I gave
Mhm.
them all the time. I had 50 minutes. 10 of that was gone with coming in and sorting out theoretically how long did I have. And then I tweaked it to the abilities of my class.
And I think it's also really important to try to find ways throughout the day to squeeze in little bits here and there, whether it's like with lining up cues or just a quick recap with the flashcards when they're lining up for lunch or at the end of the day, or trying to put it into more hands-on activities in the afternoon. Trying to get phonics into your everyday life, I think, is also really key.
Yeah, and I think also giving children any opportunity, chalks in the playground, laminated letter formation, but also I can't emphasize enough about dictation.
Yeah.
What about children? Oh, I can't read it. It's all very quick. I can't see. Um,
There was also a question about letter formation instructions. And by the way, I have this new site that will be coming out soon, Yvonne, you know, because you've been helping me with it. And on that new site, we're going to have a lot more guidance that I think will be really supportive for people. And once that site is ready, you'll see it on our main homepage. We'll send out an email to all of our subscribers. We'll be putting it on social media and everywhere so that you can check it out. But one of the cool things on that site that I'm really excited about is we do have a resource with letter formation descriptions so that you can print it off and you can just know where to start and what words to say to describe how to make that letter formation. So that will be available as well. So that is kind of exciting. Another question that we have, I think, is about the age. When do you start with Jolly Phonics? And I know, again, Yvonne, it's difficult because we have so many different contexts and so many different scenarios.
we do. And I would say that we've also got to take into consideration the cognitive ability of a child. When children are very small, from like 2 to about 3.5, there is the growing interest and awareness, as I mentioned, about environmental print and also the curiosity with print. But we've also got to understand that there's a limited time span that children will pay to a lesson. And it's, as Jen has said, how you integrate in that sounds and stories. We're building up vocabulary. Vocabulary is a huge thing because as children are building up their skills with letter sounds, understanding initial sound phonics starts before we do jolly phonics. So this is something we're also working on and how we can facilitate you in nursery. But more than anything, what I'd say is building a wraparound lesson, as I say, where you are incorporating all the elements, which we call the 5 key skills, will present you with a successful lesson. Also, that it's not just step one, it's not just doing the actions and the sounds and the stories. You need to build on that, otherwise, there's a massive gap and children can't move on to what is required at primary or transition age. We have to make sure that they have sufficient writing skills, and that involves reading. Remember, it's a duality there, encoding and decoding, so that they can move on to the next stage. So books 2 and books 3 are the transitional parts you need to move on to Jolly Literacy or any class book. So we are running out of time, I can see, and oh, it's been a very busy session, I have to say, and thank you, Jen. And I want to say thank you to all of you who patiently waited at the beginning and also have interacted with this. And we
And
look
Yvonne, if I could
forward.
add one more quick thing, because I just saw another question about how to share an assessment student reports with parents. And that's a new feature that we're working on right now behind the scenes, and it should be ready in a couple of weeks. So again, we are always updating our product and trying to make it better. So hopefully you'll notice these little changes that we're making as we go through.
Yeah, and it might be valuable in the new year to go back and do another session on assessments
Yeah.
so that
We
teachers
have
can
made
be
actually a
valued.
lot of changes in assessments recently. So all of the videos that I made initially to onboard teachers will be remade. I'm going to be working on them in the next month because there's been a lot of changes.
Well, I'm absolutely delighted with the messages that we're getting through and wishing you all a lovely Wednesday. And thank you for attending. There isn't one in December because a lot of teachers are very, very busy in December, but we look forward to seeing you again. Okay, bye for now. Thank you, Jen, and have a lovely evening. And you'll be receiving a recording very soon. Okay, bye
Okay.
for now.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.